Hello chess lovers, welcome to the new video. We are continuing our coverage of Grand Chess Tour Paris, and today we will be looking at the game between Richard Rapport and Peter Svidler. So d4, knight f6, c4, g6, and in this position, when I learned chess, normal moves were knight c3 or knight f3 or g3. But we live in 2021 and moves like this are becoming more and more standard. So we have h4, a flank attack, and as some of you may know, a good way to respond to a flank attack is with a strike in the center. So that's what Svidler does. He plays c5, and here it is not good to take this pawn because black can just regain it with this check. Or if he chooses so, he can do it this way. So the most principled reply to c5 is d5, taking the space in the center. And now we have an interesting idea, pawn to b5. This is similar to Benko gambit or Blumenfeld gambit, depends how the position pans out. So what's the idea? Black gives the pawn and then offers another pawn. So the thing is, he will gain two files on the queen side, and also later on the bishop will exert pressure, and black will have more pawns in the center, which he can take advantage of by playing moves like e6 and establishing a big center. So this is all well known. There are several ways that white can react to this. So he can capture, he can push, or he can support the pawn with e3. So to me, it looks logical to capture on a6 because after some kind of sequence of moves like this, knight c3, d6, e4, bishop f1, king f1, we lose the right to castle, but since we played h4, we have extra option of rook h3, so this loss of castling rights is not so detrimental. So I would go like this if I was in Rapport's shoes, but okay, he chooses another approach, so he plays e3 and supports the pawn with a bishop. Black continues development, bishop g7, knight c3, and castles. And now some of you may wonder, what if white goes caveman style, h5? Let's see what would happen, because this kind of sacrifices sometimes in some openings work against a fianchettoed bishop, but not here. And why not here? Because as you can see, white's pieces are far away from a black king, so black can easily fend off the attack. For example, d6, bishop d3, threatening the h7 point, but with a simple move f5, this diagonal has been clogged, so there is nothing left of white's attack, and black can also offer a queen trade. Once white avoids it, black can employ his queen into the defense as well. Alright, so of course Rapport didn't go for crazy h5, and he played a4 instead. It's a typical move. You support the b5 pawn. You don't really intend to capture with the a pawn, but once you capture here with one of your pieces, you want to have some extra support by the pawn. And here was a good moment for Svidler to attack the center. So e6 would be a very good move here, because if white captures, black would recapture with the f pawn and maybe follow up with d5 later on, making a strong center. But Svidler chose not to do that. He took a little bit slower approach and he went for bishop b7. Not bad, but maybe wastes some time. Alright, knight f3, developing move, and now a thematic move e6. So you want to challenge the d5 pawn to take advantage of your pawn majority in the center if you're black. So white took, f takes e6, and let's look at this position briefly. Let's imagine that white does something timid, let's say bishop e2. We could then just take on b5, and let's say he takes with the knight, and then we can push our d pawn to the d5 square. And look at this position. So white has an extra pawn, but black has very nice central pawns. It has the f file. The knight on f6 has some good prospects. The bishop is not too bad either, or the other bishop. And also these central pawns are controlling many squares in the center. And by the way, the knight can also from b8 jump quickly through any of these routes into the action. So black would have a very good position for the sacrifice pawn. But for this reason, white played queen d6. So he's physically blocking the d7 pawn. And let's observe what happened later. A b5, bishop b5, and here is a very interesting moment. Let's look at what Svidler played. So he played knight e4, and after these exchanges, he lost one move, basically. He lost one move, and he was left with his queen side undeveloped. And that gave white an opportunity to launch a kingside attack. But let's go back and let's imagine that he went, instead of knight e4, that he went for knight a6. I really like this move. So this was a better option. Develop your pieces, and of course this knight also supports this pawn for the moment, but the idea is to transfer this knight into action. So maybe it will go here, maybe it will capture here, depending on the situation. So let's look at possible continuation. Let's say white castles, and you go knight c7. So you are bringing your knight towards the center so that it can do something, right? So when it was on b8, it didn't do anything. It was just blocking the rook. Now it does something. So let's imagine that white captures on c5. So now white is 2 pawns up, but after a simple move, knight takes b5, which is only possible because you activated your knight. If your knight was still on b8, this would not be possible. So how can now white recapture? He cannot do it with the pawn because of this problem. Yeah, he cannot do it with the queen because of bishop a6. There is a skewer. And what's left? So he has to capture by the knight, and now this guy looks that it could be captured. So bishop f3, gf3, and knight d5, opening up the rook and opening up the queen. And even though white is 2 pawns up, black has many threats on the king side. So if the queen somehow gets to h4 or rook to f3, the evaluation could dramatically change. Also, look at white's pieces. So he has rook on f1, bishop on c1, rook on a1. These guys, not only they're not developed, but they also don't do anything. They don't do anything. Okay, the queen and the knight, they are sort of active, but also they are away from the king side, so they are not really helping white king to defend. And on the other hand, black's pieces, knight centralized, bishop raking across the board, rook active, queen threatening the pawn, And also this a8 rook is putting pressure here, and it is ready to join the action at any moment if necessary. So this would be a very nice way to sacrifice one more pawn but activate the pieces and try to look for counter chances. Instead of that, so instead of knight a6, Svidler played knight e4. So what happened? He gave white an option to trade. Knight e4, so now you have to recapture. And now it is white's move again. So essentially, he gave white a move for the privilege of exchanging one piece. And still, knight b8 and rook a8, they are far away from the action. And this will tell. White took advantage of this and he pushed h5. So the start of kingside attack. So the ideas include pushing or exchanging depending on what black does. And here, black is already in big trouble, but it was a good moment. It was a good moment to try and find a way to complicate matters. For example, even though this is also probably lost, it would maybe make white's task harder, like sacrificing an exchange. And after bishop f3, rook is attacked, so after it moves, we grab another pawn. So now black is an exchange down, but he has some lead in development, sort of, because he also has trouble here, but somehow white would need some precision here, I believe, compared to what happened in the game, which was the immediate disaster. Look at what happened. So he played queen f6, and it looks like a nice move. You develop your queen, you want to take here many times, attack all the spots in the white's camp, but first of all, white includes h6, bishop h8, and now a very good move, rook h4. So Rapport activates his rook along the fourth rank, and this is only strong for one reason. The reason is that this f6 queen cannot really retreat and cover the f8 square so easily after rook attacks it, because all the squares that I mentioned are covered. So the only available square is d8, from where she can defend the f8 rook, and that's why white can afford this. Look, bishop takes f3, and now rook f4. So as I mentioned, the queen from f6 needs to protect the f8 square because it's attacked many times, and it cannot do it so easily. You cannot go here because of the pawn. You cannot go to f7 because of the rook. You cannot go to e7 because of the queen. So you need to go to d8. That's what happened. And now comes the finishing blow. So as you can see, of course, white is the piece down, but there is pressure here. So we need somehow to take advantage of this pressure. And how do we do that? Bishop takes d7. This is the move that actually ended the game. So let's look at all the possible recaptures or logical moves by black. So first of all, what if queen takes? So if queen takes, no one is defending this rook. So queen f8 or even rook f8 is checkmate. Okay, what if knight takes? So if knight takes, then we can simply take on e6. Yeah. So there was a pawn here that was protecting this spot, and the pawn is gone. So now this is also forced checkmate. Let's go back. What if rook takes rook? So if rook takes rook, then this queen lacks protection. So we can go bishop e6. King has no moves. Rook has to block, and queen d8 is again a checkmate. What else is there? Maybe to remove the rook from this square, but where can you go? You can go to f6, but if you do that, bishop e6 is a discovered attack against the queen, and this will also end soon. You can maybe try to interpose the bishop here and close this file, So let's check that. Bishop f6. But then again, after bishop e6, king h8, now you have a square. Simple trade, queen d8, rook d8, rook f3, returning some of the material and attacking this bishop here. White is an exchange up, and also this pawn is totally controlling the king, and very soon this will be over. So after bishop d7, Peter Svidler actually resigned, and if we count the moves, it's only 18 moves. So that's quite a short game for a super GM level, I would say, and also a very instructive game for all of us to learn something about it. All right, thank you so much for watching the video. If you like the content, please comment below, share, like, and subscribe. Have a good day and see you again. Bye.